At Parker, our purpose is simple. We want to make the world a better place by working more efficiently, by using more sustainable practices, by developing better technologies. We keep moving forward. With each new idea, innovation, and partnership, we're one step closer to fulfilling our purpose every single day. To find out more, visit parker.com/purpose. Parker, engineering your success.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
No music, no intro. Hashtag Saints Twitter podcast is back. I'm feeling a little like Roger Goodell on day 3 of the draft. I'm like on my couch, not sitting up, under a blanket, just relaxing, recording a podcast, living the life. Joined as always with Ryan. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at ThatBoyWolf. And the draft is over. There is literally nothing for us to look forward to any longer. But being that the draft is over, we did have to bring our guy back, Scott Wright, to talk about the Saints draft, recap it, his thoughts on it, just have a deep dive. So first of all, how you doing, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm just like you, just kind of recuperating after the draft, and then it's like you're walking into the wilderness and the tumbleweeds rolling by, and it's like, damn, this is it, man. Nothing else, you know.
There's no OTA practice updates to look forward to there.
Yeah, and then Sean Payton was like, no, we're not doing any of that virtual mini camp BS. It's just stay home, and we'll talk to you guys in August. You know.
Yeah, it's nothing going on. So like always, you can follow Scott on Twitter at Draft Countdown. Go to Draft Countdown. Sounds like the 2021 mock is going to be up at some point there, Scott.
It's coming. I got my player pool. I just got to match up players and teams and plug them into the webpage. So yeah, it's next year's gonna be a pretty fun class. I think we're gonna have 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the first round again. We're gonna have a superstar left tackle prospect. So yeah, next year it's always fun to turn the page. Now I've been talking about the same players for 8-9 months, so I'm excited to start fresh and start digging into a new group, and certainly have plenty of time to do it now with the current situation in the world.
So Ryan asked this when we were not recording, and I've kind of have pondered on this on Twitter. I think it was either this week or last week. So if there is no college football season, what potentially does the NFL do in terms of the 2021 NFL draft? Like, it's just so uncharted territory. Like, I thought like maybe a complete lottery system, but I don't know how they would rectify that.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the closest parallel you could probably find, at least recently, was the NHL. When they didn't have a season, they did a kind of a lottery within tiers based on the records from the year before. And I think that's the most likely way. I don't think you can do a straight lottery. You can't have a chance of the Chiefs getting Trevor Lawrence and then be able to raffle off that pick or anything like that. So I think you have to throw some little qualifiers and things of that nature in there. But I guess that would be the closest parallel. But who knows? I mean, it's such uncharted territory. And I think there's a really good chance it's going to be an NFL season. I think they'll find a way to do it because there's so much money, the TV contracts, they want to get the games on the air. But college football, I mean, that's a lot tougher, especially when you're talking about college kids, quote unquote amateurs. But I mean, are there going to be students on campus? Are they going to be allowed on campus and not other students? There's just so many what ifs about this college football season that I'm almost more interested to see what happens there as opposed to the NFL.
So in the same vein, before we get talking about the Saints and their draft class, could we see an abundance, or maybe not abundance, but like a rash of players enter the supplemental draft upcoming in the next couple of months with the uncertainty for the college football season?
Yeah, I was recently thinking about that, and it's possible. Maybe with so much uncertainty, they just want to strike right now while they can. But at the same time, I mean, there's a reason these guys went back to school. It's because they weren't that highly thought of. They needed that senior season to really elevate their stock. So they'll be taking a lot of risk, not to mention the fact that teams, the supplemental draft is already not nearly as much due diligence as a normal prospect would get, and there's going to be far less now. So how comfortable are teams going to feel investing a future draft pick in a guy they haven't really been able to dig deep on? So there's just so many question marks. I don't know how much more advantageous it is for a guy to enter the supplemental draft this year as opposed to just waiting for the normal draft and see what comes.
All right, so let's quickly recap the Saints draft. They ended up with 4 draft picks. Round 1, they kind of a slight curve or swerve in terms of the selection. Although as Saints fans, I think we've kind of expected that to come in terms of staying at 24 and drafting center / potentially offensive guard Cesar Ruiz. In round 3, they traded up and drafted Zach Bond, edge / off-ball linebacker from Wisconsin. They also drafted Troutman, tight end from Dayton, and they finished it off by trading a pick for next year to draft Tommy Stevens, quarterback from Mississippi State, and also played at Penn State. So not a lot of players for a team that is considered a stacked top, deep team, contender in the NFC, contender in the NFL. So not a lot of positions to, have competition at. But just in general, what were your overall thoughts on the Saints draft class?
Yeah, definitely a quality over quantity approach with just those 4 picks and really 3 picks in the early rounds. But they did a good job of kind of finding that balance between bringing in guys who are going to help them win now and also keeping an eye on the future to a certain degree. The other thing, too, is I wish and I'm sure you guys could get all the time back we spent talking about wide receivers for the Saints. Here they didn't draft a wide receiver at all. We thought, maybe they take one in the first round. No wide receivers. That was a little bit of a surprise. That would probably be my one maybe criticism of their class, is that they could have brought in another pass catcher, especially in this draft that was just so incredibly strong. But I mean, I have no arguments with what they did with those first 3 picks, and the last one is just a wild card. And we can talk about Tommy Stevens, the quarterback from Mississippi State, who's a lot of nice pieces there, but not a great football player. And he gets you hear the Taysom Hill comparisons, but the difference is Taysom Hill was a really good college football player. Tommy Stevens never put it all together in college, but intriguing skill set in terms of the size, the athleticism, the arm strength. I remember hearing about him a year ago at this time at the Manning Passing Academy, getting rave reviews for what he did there. So a toolsy guy, and clearly, based on the reports that I just saw recently, Sean Payton and the Saints really, really, really wanted Tommy Stevens. So, hey, if you have that type of conviction in a player in the late rounds, I mean, a future 6th-round pick to go get him, what the heck? Very much a wild card, though.
Yeah. I mean, you're missing out on the wide receivers. Obviously, if you peeked into Saints Twitter, it was a mess. Because like you said, we talked about it all year. Saints going to get a wide receiver. Tony Pauline had us getting 2 wide receivers. So then we signed then we signed Emmanuel Sanders, and we're like, okay, we're going to get at least one. Something
Everybody
in the back
kind of picks their favorites.
Yeah, everybody had their favorites, and you figure we're going to at least, if not in the first round, they're going to trade up in the second round and snatch one or something. But it didn't happen. But, we've went through this in the past with the Saints. And, a couple of years ago, they were about to draft Reuben Foster. We all loved Reuben Foster. Then something, the 49ers snuck up and drafted him right before us. We wound up drafting Ryan Ramczyk. Pretty much everyone hated it at the time, but now he's like all pro, about to get a huge contract in the next year or so. So it's one of those.
I was just going to say, I'm fully prepared every time T. Higgins scores a touchdown. We'll hear a tweet from Adam on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Saying he's this guy.
It's ready. T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr. It's
drafts.
Michael Pittman, Justin Jefferson going to the Vikings killed it. I mean, they got Justin Jefferson. They got Jeff Gladney, who I really liked. I was just like, oh, my God, why do this? But
15 picks, they're going to have the deepest practice squad in the league.
Oh, man, they needed it, though. But back to Saints. Cesar Ruiz, I don't sit and watch offensive line. I'm just not going to, commit that to my day. What did you come about feeling about him? I know a lot of people kind of had him as either a low first or a second round pick.
I think I tweeted a couple months back that of all the prospects in this class, I don't know that many got more universal praise from evaluators than Ruiz. Everybody that watched his film came away liking him. He's that type of player, and not necessarily one skill that really stands out. He's just really adequate across the board. Good, not great athlete. Good strength, not great. But it just all comes together in a really terrific, well-rounded package. And also he brings those intangibles that are so important for, especially if he's ends up playing center long-term, but anywhere along the interior of the line, the closer you are to the ball, you want the higher level of intelligence, and he definitely checks that mark. So, and that was right where he was supposed to go. I mean, I think in my final mock draft, I had him going 23, and he wound up going 24. I thought he was a first-round pick. I had no idea the Saints were going to be the one taking him, but I mean, it makes sense. That's a position the Saints have historically prioritized on draft day, and an area they're willing to invest in. So, not the flashiest pick they could have made, probably the least flashy pick they possibly could have made there, but as safe as a pick as they possibly could have made. And I mean, that's going to be a 10-year player for him.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think something that goes maybe it doesn't go under the radar, and not even someone who is in tune with football like I am. The draft is about opening that Christmas present, and you're just like, yeah, you're excited about it. And an offensive lineman is never, unless your team is just garbage on the offensive line, like the Jets or other teams. If you're an already decent team, getting an offensive lineman is just going to be like, womp, womp, womp. However,
it's like the equivalent of getting socks or a sweater or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some pajamas. But I will say that across the board, even with the Ruiz pick, you look at the Saints offensive line. You have Armstead. Obviously, he has his injury consistency, and he's injured often throughout the season. But you have Armstead. You have Pete. You have potentially Ruiz, and then they'll potentially move McCoy to right guard. It sounds like Larry Warford's time in New Orleans is somehow it's ending, whether it be trade or cut at some point. And then you have Ramczyk at right tackle. They're set for the future and the now in terms of their offensive line for Ruiz to make a one last run, as well as whoever the quarterback of the future is going to be, whether it be Taysom, whether it be Jameis, whether it be another quarterback that's not even on the roster. That is, in theory, a very stacked offensive line in the top, I would say, top 3, top 5 offensive line in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, and it should be for the investments they've made, but their investments have paid off. They've got a really good hit rate there, and I'm one who's never going to argue against building along that offensive line, especially when you have an elderly quarterback like Drew Brees. So it makes a whole lot of sense, and they're at the point now where if they just resign the guys they have, that they shouldn't have to make a huge investment in that position for a long time, with exception maybe a left tackle. But that's probably a little down the line. So yeah, they're set up now for years to come.
So then the the second round goes by. There were many reports that the Saints were trying to trade back up. It didn't happen, but they eventually traded up enough to get their guy Zach Bond. I studied a little bit of him before the draft. I wasn't really blown away by his athleticism, but honestly I didn't put too much time in it because I just knew we were going to draft either Queen or Murray if we did draft the linebacker. But apparently that didn't happen. So what were your thoughts on Zach Bond? Where'd you have him rated, and what's his outlook?
So before Scott, I just want to quickly interject. It's funny because in the lost episode 0 of hashtag Saints Twitter Pod, we had a little section where we talked about Zach Bond for at least a minute or two that no one will ever hear. So anyway, I'm gonna just piggyback quickly off Ryan. When I saw him as a player before the Saints drafted him, because I started looking him up just like Ryan did, because there were some rumblings and you saw some mock drafts having the Saints take him at 24. So I watched them and I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it. And then I reached out to Scott through text message, and he makes the most I would say that's Scott's one of his pros in terms of as a prospect. If you're making Scott a prospect, his player comparisons are bar none. They are spot on. So he made the comparison Zach Bond to Cowboy Noy, and it was one of the most perfect on the money comparisons, and I haven't been able to shake it since.
Yeah, I think there's some comparisons there, and if that is a comparison, it's probably a little concerning for a Saints fan because it took Kyle Van Noy a little time and another organization to kind of really find his niche and the right way to utilize his kind of unique skill set, and Bond has that kind of unique skill set. And like Adam said, I mean, there was some chatter that he was a dark horse candidate for the Saints in round 1. So to get him where they did in round 3 was terrific value. And I'm not sure how much that diluted sample on the drug test at the scouting combine had to do with that. But I would have been, late round 1, that would have been a little rich for me for him. But round 3, I mean, that's a terrific pick. And the thing I guess I like most about it for the Saints, other than the value and addressing a need, is he kind of gives them a different dimension at the linebacker position than they've had. I'm trying to remember the last time the Saints had a linebacker who was a legitimate threat and weapon as a pass rusher and blitzer. Maybe you guys have somebody in mind, and maybe I'm missing somebody obvious, but he's going to bring something to the table that I know nobody on their current roster has. But I'm trying to think back. When was the last time they had someone who could get after the quarterback and be a capable weapon behind the line of scrimmage at linebacker?
Like Vaughn Johnson in the 90s.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ricky Jackson.
So another player you compared Bond to, and this is a player that I loved as a prospect, and he's shown flashes in the NFL as well, is I'll just always refer to him as USC number 42. I don't even try to say his actual name.
Kenna Nuoso. I gotta give credit to Daniel Jeremiah for that one, I think.
So because I see both the Cowboy Noy comparisons, and I see also the USC 42 comparisons, and so I think the biggest thing that worries me as a Saints fan is, to me, projecting him to be an off-ball linebacker. He showed it a bit at Wisconsin, but if you actually watch his film, he is an edge defender in a 3-4 defense, and he's rushing the quarterback at least 90% of the snaps, it seems like. And so it feels like projecting him to be an off-ball linebacker is just that. It's a projection. And there's been talks that he potentially may play the weak side, the will position, which I would understand. But there's also talks that they potentially want him to play the Mike, which is a little concerning to me. So I know you were at the Super Bowl and the Senior Bowl, and you got to see him in Senior Bowl practices performing off the ball drills, linebacker drills. What were your impressions when you saw him, in person?
Yeah, and that was the big question with him going into the Senior Bowls. We wanted to see him work in reverse and see him operate in coverage, and I think he handled himself well. I think he certainly showed the skill set to do it, and he's going to need a little bit of reps, and it's going to take maybe a little time to come along. But I think the tools and the ability are definitely there to be effective in that aspect of the game. And the other thing too, being down at the Senior Bowl, got to see him a little bit off the field and see him interacting and talk with him for a couple minutes. Really impressive kid. I mean, he's a high character guy who's you're going to want representing your organization. So obviously it comes down to what you do on the field, but that's definitely a nice little added bonus.
Yeah, I noticed that about all the Saints draft picks. Just listening to Jeff Ireland and the scouting staff, think of the last few years they went back and they really made character a big part of their evaluation, giving it to give it more weight in the evaluation in the overall grade. So I mean, when I look at all the Saints draft picks this year, and I listened to their interviews, they all came off as just really likable, really smart, charismatic, football hungry, those type of guys. So I guess that's one good thing. Obviously, what you do on the field matters more than that, but I think those two go together pretty well. So moving down to the tight end, who I've grown pretty excited about. I liked him a little bit when I watched him earlier this year, even though there wasn't much tape I could watch. And watching that tape just feels like I'm kind of watching a high school team. But Adam Troutman from Dayton, I really like him. I think he would be a pretty different tight end than the Saints have had in a while. Probably the most similar type would probably be, I don't know. I mean, I guess Dave Thomas, but even him, he was like a smaller, kind of H-back looking tight end. But I like the dimension he could possibly add to the Saints. What was your opinion on Adam Troutman?
Well, a year ago at this time, he was already on the radar. He has been throughout the entire process, was considered one of the top small school prospects. So I remember watching him last summer and being really impressed with his pass catching ability. But I had questions about him as a blocker. He needed to bulk up. He needed to get stronger and work on his blocking. And he did that this season. He made strides in every one of those regards. And I think I saw that same thing down at the Senior Bowl. And of all the players at the Senior Bowl this year, he was as popular amongst the scouts that are down there gathering information as anybody that I can recall. So I was shocked that he lasted as long as he did. On my board, I think I had him at 66 overall, so kind of late second, early third. But I thought he was clearly, if not the second best tight end in this draft, definitely the third best. And I thought he might get pushed up a little bit because this class was pretty shallow. So I think tremendous value, and I think the Saints felt it was tremendous value too when you look back and what they gave up to trade up to secure that pick to take him. And it's a great situation for him too. It's a big leap in competition and not something he can't overcome. And he certainly looked like he belonged out the Senior Bowl, but now with the Saints, they can kind of bring him along slowly for at least a year. And so it's just really a great fit for both player and team.
Yeah, I remember kind of when the Senior Bowl was going on, or the Senior Bowl practices, it seemed like every day on Twitter, someone on football Twitter was posting something on Adam Troutman, and it sounded like he just had a very great week overall in the Senior Bowl. It had a good actual senior, in terms of practices, and then it actually led to having a good Senior Bowl game. And I think that was the concern that if you're watching him as a prospect, is the small school, and can it translate when the competition picks up? And it sounded like he did well for himself, even when that competition did pick up.
Yep, absolutely. And another guy that really comes off well as a person, kind of a small town kid. I think I remember hearing him talk about his backstory. I think he grew up in Michigan or somewhere around there, and just kind of you can tell he's got kind of a small town personality a little bit. So I'm sure the lights and brights of New Orleans, the lights of New Orleans are going to be a little bit of a rude awakening for him. You'll have to get used to that and make that adjustment. But a really, really good prospect. And that's one of those cases where maybe it won't make a huge impact this year, but it's going to pay dividends in year 2, 3, 4.
I've seen some. Again, this is, I feel, is your one of your strongest traits besides your taste in music and your taste in TV shows, is the player comparison. So I've seen like a Tyler Higbee player comparison. I've also seen like a Zach Ertz player comparison. Like, what did you view him as a player?
Yeah, Tyler Higbee is a pretty good one. I think he's better though. I'm just going through the teams. I'm actually at the Arlad's depth charts page here. I'm just kind of paging through the teams, seeing who kind of jumps out at me. I think there's some similarities to the guy that was the first tight end drafted here in Cole Kmet. Maybe not quite as good of a blocker as Kmet, but a better pass catcher. But similar kind of frames. Both really good athletes at that position. I think there's some comparisons to be made there. So, yeah, I mean, I think Cole Kmet's a good comparison. I guess that's the best one that I can think of off the top of my head. I'll let you know if I come up with a better one.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about him. I like the possibilities of, more 12 personnel with Trotman and Jared Cook. They said Jeff Ireland and Sean Payton said he's going to be sort of a wide tight end, more inline blocking, not just blocking, but blocking and pass catching. And I love his hands. I just watched it. I think he's like a really good pass catcher, real soft hands. So I really do think he might not do much. I'd be surprised if he caught more than like 30 passes this year. But I think he's going to have those little package plays where he might, especially in the red zone, he might see some targets from Drew. So that's the draft. And then, there's Tommy Stevens. We talked about him earlier. But I really want to kind of dip into the undrafted free agents. I don't know. I just throw a couple names out there. There were Marquez Callaway from Tennessee, Jawan Johnson from Oregon and Penn State. Those guys, I think they were ranked like 40 and 42 respectively on your rankings. Did you have any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, both those guys, I think, fall into the category of almost any other year. They have a really, really good chance being drafted. It was a really strong draft class. Marquez Callaway, he was at the NFLPA All-Star Game. And for those who've been following the draft and go way back, Dave T. Thomas, who's like kind of on the Mount Rushmore of NFL draftniks, he was really high on Marquez Callaway. So that was a good pickup. And then, Jawan Johnson's kind of interesting. Like you said, he started out at Penn State and then he transferred to Oregon for his senior season. 6'4", 230. He ran a 4.58 at the combine. He was at the East-West All-Star Game. So always considered a top-level prospect. It's just, what do you do with him? Is he just a one-dimensional jump ball, red zone type threat? I think that's a concern. And because he's probably not going to help much on special teams. So I think that's a concern with him, why he went undrafted. Just concerned about whether maybe he's a little one-dimensional. But two really good pickups. Like you said, I had them in the I think I had Jawan Johnson I had at 40, and I had Callaway at 42. So both guys, I mean, any other year, they would have been fringe draftable guys.
What would you, if going kind of, it looks like the Saints really emphasized with undrafted free agents is it seems like they brought in a lot of depth along the offensive line. What out of the players that they brought in from that position or, along the offensive line, which player kind of stood out to you the most in terms of potentially has a shot at making the team?
Well, Darren Paulo from Utah is interesting, but of course the name to talk about is Calvin Throckmorton, the offensive tackle from Oregon, who's a very high-profile, decorated college player, and was very well scouted. At one point, he was committed to 3 different All-Star games. I think he wound up playing in 2, including the Senior Bowl. Didn't have a great week at the Senior Bowl, in large part because due to some numbers issues, they had to play him outside where he was just overmatched. He definitely needs to play on the interior at either guard or center. But I think that's what his value is the versatility, that he can play 3 different positions. He could save you a roster spot on game day if you're confident in his ability to play all 3 for short stretches. So, and like I said, that's probably a name that people are shocked went undrafted, but he was very much on that fringe. not a great athlete. He only ran a 5.57 at the scouting combine. I think that was one of the slowest times, regardless of position. But a good football player. And for what it's worth, Duke Manyweather on Twitter, for those who follow him, he's the offensive line guru. He really stands by Throckmorton and believes in him. So that goes somewhere with me. And when a guy who's really an expert in the field vouches for a player like he has. So Throckmorton, I think, is definitely the guy to keep an eye on, not only among the offensive linemen they brought in, but maybe their free agent class as a whole.
Well, I guess the last one for me, you were kind of early on this, but Jameis Winston. We talked about him a little on the last podcast as a possibility with the Saints. And, here we are today. He is signed, $1.1 million base salary. And he's like saying, who that, on the Saints presser and all that. So he's like a New Orleans Saint. For real.
You can't afford not to sign him for $1 million.
Right. So
I mean, I love it. I love it. I'm on the record. I am still a Jameis Winston truther. I still believe in him. He's still young. I think there's a lot to work with there, and I love this fit for him. I think the Saints are obviously getting a tremendous deal, and I love this fit for him. He gets a chance to learn under Sean Payton and Drew Brees and maybe be the long-term successor there. If not, he can showcase himself and get himself ready to go somewhere else and be a starting quarterback again. So I think just a tremendous fit, and I'm so happy this happened. It makes as a football fan, this makes my heart happy because I was a fan of Teddy Bridgewater too, and the situation couldn't have worked out better for him. And I think Jameis Winston has an even higher upside.
Yeah, you were on. Everyone wants to kind of claim who was first, and potentially like the Jameis thing. I looked through my phone, and you sent me a text message on March 20th, where you're just putting like this is what I'm hearing type of thing, and you had your person telling you like maybe this could happen, and it sure enough did. And I've gone on record to say like I would be shocked, if this is Drew's last year, I would be shocked if Jameis isn't starting quarterback next. A lot needs to be played out, but I'm on the mindset that once actual practices start happening, in terms of talent, in terms of just strictly arm talent, he's had the most arm talent that Sean Payton has had since he's been the head coach of the Saints. And I think
and you know what the other thing I like about this is that $1 million. That shows that Jameis Winston is serious about this, because I'm sure he could have made more money more elsewhere, and it's kind of embarrassing probably to go from where he was to making $1 million a year. But that shows that he recognizes the opportunity, the unique opportunity that the Saints present. And he's going down there. He's going to be all in. He wants to improve himself. He's going to be open to their tutelage, and he's going to soak it all in. So I think that dollar figure is kind of a laughing point, but it's also, I think, speaks to Winston's commitment to this kind of strategy and this idea.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's going to take one practice for Peyton to see his actual arm talent in person in practice. And I can envision his mind going, okay, now I can run this play. I can run this play. And that's just how coaches think. And, I don't know what the rules are, but even if I could potentially seeing them apply the transition tag to him, after this season, if, that gives them more time to see what his value is as a player. That's a long ways away, but we felt like we wanted to, give you a shout out because you were the first person that was kind of, putting this idea potentially that Jameis could sign with the Saints, and it came to fruition. So props to you and obviously your sources that you have as well.
Well, thank you. When I heard it, it made me happy, and I knew you'd probably be intrigued too. So that's a fun one. It's one of those where the rumors actually come true. It doesn't always happen that way.
No, obviously. You would have thought we had a wide receiver at 24 if all the rumors come true. But thanks again, Scott, as always, for joining us. Follow Scott on Twitter at Draft Countdown. Go to draftcountdown.com on Monday. It will be the 2021 mock posted. I hope at that point, Scott, when you have the Saints picking at 31, that you will have us drafting the right receiver.
I was gonna ask, is that the way I should go, wide receiver?
I mean, I would say right receiver, but knowing them, whoever a late round first left tackle is would probably be the good route to go. So,
all right, I'll file it away.
But thank you so much for joining us, Scott. We appreciate you getting on, recapping the draft, all that. It's always a pleasure. Always good to talk football with you. And thanks for coming on again, man.
Thanks,
anytime,
Scott.
guys. Good talking with you.
All right.
So with that, folks, we're gonna head out. Just doing these episodes, there's nothing else to do. So as always, you can follow Ryan on Twitter at thatboywolf. You don't follow me on Twitter because it's pointless. And with that, we're out.
Peace.
O'Reilly. You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.